Hello and welcome to a new exclusive edition of the TNC podcast. And I am super pumped and privileged to get stuck into this yellow and green conversation today. 58 appearances for our great club, 8 glorious goals, 1 against the scum, of course, 2 Premier League promotions, 1 championship title, 1 Norwich City Premier League survival. Yes, that counts as an accolade right now. And a man that likes to lift trophies in his pants. Arguably also, and I bet you get this a lot, the most handsome midfielder we've had at our football club. It's, of course, Andrew Surman. How are you doing, mate?
Not sure about that last one, but yeah, I'll take it. Why not?
Are you well? Are you all good?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Yeah, no, all good. Just enjoying retirement from football, not retirement from everything, but retirement from football, and yeah, just enjoying time with the kids and just I think obviously having played for 17 years, it's been nice just to sit back and sort of see what I'm going to do next, really, and just enjoy watching football rather than the stress of playing it, which I loved, but comes with its own stress.
What is it like being like in the normal world now? Like, because as you say, you've spent the majority of your life in the footballer bubble, if you will, and now you're not in that bubble. Like, what's the transition been like between sort of like, finishing football and then into retirement now? Like, because we've had this on the cards for a while, this podcast, and like it seems like you're more busy than you were in your career.
Yeah, I think you probably took the words out of my mouth. It's funny because you sort of think you're gonna have loads of time on your hands, but actually there's so much stuff going on all the time with the family, and I think I'm sort of trying to get into other sort of things like property and stuff like that. So I'm trying to keep myself busy, but by keeping yourself busy, and also when I think people know you're available now, you're not sort of he's training or you can't come out because obviously he's playing tomorrow or whatever. You end up with a lot more time on your hands. So yeah, so I think I've ended up filling my time, and then suddenly things pop up, and so it's been on the cards for a little while, but finally got there, and yeah, I'm just really enjoying some time, like I say, with my family, and just seeing what the next step brings.
You get plonkers like me knock on your door saying, "Oh, Andrew, the podcast," and I really look forward to getting into it. I really, really do. And let's kick off with what I think is a bit of a wild story, actually, Andrew, which is that I'd watched or listened to something somewhere. I think it was actually thanks to the Bournemouth boys actually on this. You signed for Norwich, but just tell me how that happened. Did Paul Lambert tap you up on your honeymoon? Am I right in saying?
Yeah, it was a sort of strange one, really, because I went. I was at Wolves for a year, and I was looking to get out, obviously leave. So my agent said, "Look, Norwich are sort of interested, but go away on your honeymoon. I just got married. Go on your honeymoon. Enjoy that. We'll see what happens." And then I was sat down having lunch by the pool with my mum and dad because they came as well. My wife and obviously my little boy Alfie. And we sat there, and I looked over my dad's shoulder and I said, "I think that's Paul Lambert over there," and he was sat behind us on his own, and I was thinking, that's a bit strange. So I phoned my agent. I said, I think Paul Lambert's here, because obviously I knew the interest, and he said he's probably come over to sort of try and speak to you. So I sort of left it, and then my agent phoned Paul Lambert and said, "Look, Andrew's there as well," and he said, "Oh, okay, we'll arrange a meeting." But it was funny because obviously then we knew he was there, and we kept bumping into him, and he was sort of his budgie smugglers around a pool and things like that. It was just I had to leave my wife away. Yeah, I think exactly, with his iron brew, but but it was so it was strange, really, and then it was almost like the deal was done there, because I don't know if he was there because he wanted to sort of sign me or whether it was just coincidence. But yeah, he was literally sat at the table next to me on his own, so I assumed it was that for that reason. And yeah, from that point onwards, we had a few chats, and he sort of said, "Look, do you want to sign?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I want you to come back now." I said, "Well, I can't. I'm on my honeymoon." So I think he was almost like, "Look, if you're going to go somewhere else, please tell me, because obviously I don't want you sort of staying there and then you get back and we're ready to sign you and then you go somewhere else." So I said, "No, look, obviously we've agreed it." So yeah, and that was history. But yeah, it was a bit of a surreal moment, really, because I've never obviously had that, and I mean, I don't know whether it was coincidence or not, but the fact he was sat behind me after I've just spoken
It
to
wasn't.
obviously to Norwich, my agent. So it was it was a bit of a strange one.
It wasn't a coincidence, was it? He blatantly followed you there, and it's fun. It's funny you should say it. Actually, and we'll get into Paul Lambert now because I've always thought like Lambert has this aura about him, right? And I hate to admit it now, obviously, given that he went to Ipswich, but he just had that almost that, dare I say, Ferguson aura about him, the angry Scottish man thing, where I was like, there was something about the fact that you probably knew that Lambert was sitting there before you even saw him with your own eyes. I was recently getting a flight back from Scotland and Glasgow, and Paul Lambert's at the front of the queue, and I'm thinking, you're still as scary as you were at Norwich, even though you've gone to Ipswich now. So just talk about like your I guess your first time meeting Paul. Like, what was the conversation and like what was your takeaway from it? Like, did you instantly get on with him, or did he have that sort of scary aura that I've mentioned there?
I'd probably say he had that aura of a manager. You know, when you knew he was the manager. You know, it wasn't one of those where he was like, you know, I think one time he bumped into me. I think I was on a. It was almost like a dance floor, but it was an outdoor thing with my wife, and it was early evening. And he came in, and I had a beer in my hand, and he sort of said, he was like, "Oh, that's a week's wages," and I didn't even start it there. And I was like, "Oh, sorry," and I was thinking, you know, it's stuff like that. But it was a bit of banter, but you sort of thinking he's probably serious, you know. But yeah, I think he had I think because of what he achieved in his career as well. You know, people like him, I'd probably liken him to sort of people like Steven Gerrard, Lampard. You know, all the players probably from my generation that I played against that are now sort of retiring and going into management. He had that instant respect. So you'd look at him and think, well, he's won the Champions League and he's played for massive clubs, Celtic, obviously, Borussia Dortmund. So I think you had that respect straight away, and I think that carried on actually probably when I joined, because when actually he used to come and sit in the dressing room and have a bit of banter with the lads, but it was like there was such a fine line. You had to be really careful. He said, because you know, there was like, you weren't allowed to use your phones in the dressing room ever. You weren't allowed to text or anything like that, and you know, someone would have a little sneaky look at their phone in their locker, and he'd come up behind you and he'd be like, right, you know, whatever, how much the fine was, you know, you'd be on lookout. You have someone at the door waiting for him to come down the corridor just in case they're on look. You know, you get one of the young lads to do it. But yeah, I think it's he's got that aura about him, and I think and that's why he was so successful at Norwich, really, because I think when you look at players, sometimes players need the manager more than the manager needs the players. You know, he needs you, but you're almost like, well, there's no egos in the dressing room. You're sort of thinking, well, we need to do well for him because we want to do well, and I think there was that mutual respect, and you know, I think as well as we did for him, he did well for us. So I think, you know, there was just that massive respect between him and the players, I think.
We'll have to do this in a bit of a wacky order today, because I want to dive into Paul Lambert more as well, and like because of course we need to, you know, give Cully a shout, and Gary Carser as well, who are a big part of his team. And is there a time that springs to mind where, you know, the proverbial trolley was kicked over at half time? Were there any particular, you know, spats with Lambert, either with yourself or one of the other lads, where you've gone, oof, blimey, like I'm in trouble here, or did he manage to keep his cool? Because I see him as like really kicking off.
Yeah, I've been on the end of one as well. I mean, we played MK Dons in the cup. We lost 4-0 at home. I think we were in the Premier League at that time. And I think the week leading up to it, I'd done a couple of little bits of sort of banter in the dressing room, which I think he'd seen, and I don't know if he appreciated it or not. But he it just sort of, there was a couple of bits leading up to it, and then I think in the game I gave a back pass and it got cut out and they scored and we lost 4-0 and they absolutely battered us. It was a bit embarrassing, really, and he came in afterwards and he absolutely went mental at me, and just sort of, you know, talked to me about being a joker and all that sort of thing, and, you know, it basically just dug me out massively. And that was probably the only time he's probably hammered me personally, and it was probably a bit of a wake up call for me, just obviously try and rein it a little bit and take things a little bit more seriously. But I was in the dressing room a few times where he's come for individual players, and he wasn't scared to. But what I liked about him is that he had a great balance. You know, he would motivate people and he would get the best out of players, but he wouldn't be scared to dig anyone out. It doesn't matter who you were, he was coming for you. And I think again, you have to have that respect, because as soon as you lose the dressing room, which you never did, that's when problems start. But it was always like, right, that's, you know, there was a discipline involved, as much as it was fun and it was great. And then we were obviously, you know, getting promoted and stuff like that. It was there was a discipline involved as well. So
that's a really fascinating story, and yeah, I can imagine that that you certainly learnt your lesson from that massive heated argument with him. Just
yeah.
talk a bit about your experience with Ian Culverhouse and Gary Cars as well, Andrew, because there's always been this sort of like quiet sort of rumbling away debate amongst the Yellow Army, and particularly obviously having left Norwich City for past, you know, obviously going on to Aston Villa and obviously unfortunately the scum down the road as well. And it's not quite clicked for him after Norwich. And a lot of people say, well, that's because Ian Culverhouse and Gary Carser were you know the men behind the scene that sort of were almost the masterminds of this, and Lambert was almost just a motivator. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that?
I probably disagree with that. I think they were a great team altogether. I think they all brought different things. I think I've worked with teams of managers and coaches, you know, since then and before that, where, you know, you needed a balance of people that were willing to do different things. You know, a coach might be a little bit more personal with the players, whereas a manager had to be above the players, and, you know, stuff like that. So it was a great balance. But I think, I mean, I don't know the reasons why it didn't work out when he went to Villa. You know, you're looking at what I talked about earlier about, you know, egos and things like that. And that's no disrespect to obviously the Villa players where he went to manage. But when you step up to a club like Villa, I wouldn't say step up, oh, that's not disrespectful to Norwich either, but you got players on a lot more money.
Yeah.
You got bigger names probably potentially than were at Norwich when I was there. You know, you're going into a different environment where it's almost like suddenly the players, you have to earn their respect again, and it can be quite difficult. But I don't know if that's the reason, but it was a sort of a different step, and I don't know why it went wrong. You know, I think sometimes, I mean, the teams I've been involved in that have done the best, or, you know, that have been promoted, obviously Bournemouth and Norwich, and have had some success, is usually the teams that I would probably say you just get this mix of players that bounce off the manager. There's this certain type of manager very well, and you just got this whole magic mix of people involved, and then the backroom staff and the whole club is just mixed, and it's a great mix. On the other end, you can get a really toxic environment. So I was lucky to be a part of that, and I think I'm sure, you know, Paul Lambert was lucky to have that as a group. We were lucky to have him, and obviously in Culverhouse and Kaza as a management team, and it just seemed to click. Whereas sometimes you go to another club, you got the management team, but the players don't quite click, or you don't quite have that chemistry, which again potentially might have been the reason. But I can't really comment too much on when he moved, because obviously I don't really know what went on behind the scenes. So
no, that's fair enough. And you started to mention it there, Andrew, about, you know, the magic and the fact that just sort of the stars aligned, and it really did. Obviously, you joined when we'd been promoted from League One. We're back in the Championship, and that I really want to just sort of ask you for your thoughts and feelings, really, in terms of like when you first met that group of players. Like, what was it like, and who were the catalysts in that changing room? Like, who were the players that stand out in your mind now when you go, yeah, you were the culture setter, you were the guy that sort of did that? Because it's all very well and good, of course, and that's the cliche, right? Isn't it? Like, you know, just everyone clicked. But were there sort of any particular players that stood out for you when you first joined the club back in 2010?
Yeah, I think obviously Grant Holt was a massive one. He was the captain, a massive character, very, very strong character. You know, stuck by his word, set an example. Came from the lower league, so wasn't one of those people that was sort of looking down on anyone. He was like, I've been there, I've done it. You know, don't come in this dressing room and start, you know, pushing your ego around here or throwing money shouts around, you know, anything like that. You had Russell Martin, vice captain, again, very, very strong character. And I think you just had, I mean, those two probably, and then obviously when I joined, there was other players that added to the mix. You know, Andrew Crofts, David Fox. I mean, all the players really that. I mean, I'd probably say most of the players that I'd probably say there was probably 6 players that were really sort of strong characters and knew each other, were close. They'd come up from League One, they were tight
Yeah.
knit, and they dragged everyone along with them. So when I joined, it was like, right, this is how we do it. This is what we're doing. I'm trying to join a group that have already had success in League One. So
Yeah.
I'd probably say those two individuals mainly were the catalyst for keeping our standards and things like that. Really. So as much as everyone contributed throughout the season, they set it off, I think.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. And we can't waste any more time without going into what is probably my favourite game of all time. It's up there with some of the best victories. But I think this game beats it, and that is the 21st of April 2011. Does that ring any bells? Can you guess which game it is?
Ipswich.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 5-1 in their own backyard, and of course you scored the opener. And after that, the floodgates opened. Just talk us through talk the Yellow Army through what that day was like from start to finish in terms of, being on the bus with the boys and like the pre-match prep. And I really just want to hear what was it like as a player going to that, because I think there's almost this perception that fans think that players don't get local derbies. Like, what was that game like to be a part of, Andrew?
It's incredible. I mean, there's always special games in your career that you always remember, whether it be derbies or not. But we were well aware going into, especially away from home. I think sometimes is like you're going into the Lions' Den. You're almost going somewhere where you're thinking we want to turn these over. Like, and the hardcore fans that travelling away, it's full. They've maximised the capacity for the away end.
Yeah.
And I think on top of that, the importance of the game, because obviously, we're trying to get promoted, and it's a massive game, and then we're near it. So you're like, well, we want to like shove it down their throats type attitude, and that's sort of where you're at. You're building up to the game, and the importance is constantly. It's not overdone because obviously you don't want to put too much into it, the sort of background of it, because otherwise then players get too intense, and then you end up red cards and. But I think it was just I think at that time we were playing so well, and we were such a good balanced side, and we were going into every game thinking we're going to smash these or we're going to win this. And it just, that mentality, that winning mentality, which again Paul Lambert brought into the club, it was just a point where you were like, we're going to win this. And I love playing at Portman Road. I don't like to say it because obviously Norwich City fans, but I love playing at that stadium because it's a big pitch. I played there since, I played there before. I just felt you had that good feeling when you go in there. You think, I like playing there. So, like I say, you can play football on this pitch, and
it's easy as well. It's easy as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But when you're playing, when you're sort of playing in a good environment where you feel comfortable as a player, I just, and the importance and the adrenaline gets you through, and it was an amazing feeling to score in that game, and obviously to win by that margin as well, and celebrate with the fans. And like I say, we were so close to the end of the season, and it was such a big game. To win so emphatically, the confidence going through the squad was just incredible.
What were the conversations like? Perhaps just before kickoff and at half time after the match, like you say there, like and I remember because I was in the stands and coincidentally next to Simeon Jackson's parents, right? And it was just so special. But like, what were the boys like beforehand? And like, did that energy from the fans sort of seep into the squad? Because like that really, like that word iconic gets banded around a lot, mainly by people like me that get carried away too much. But it truly was iconic. Like, did you realize what you'd achieved that day?
Yeah, especially when it's like, it's under the lights as well. Like that's extra special, and you just get that extra buzz, and you could feel it when you run out the tunnel. It's difficult because as a player and as a squad and all the players, like I said, I mentioned obviously Grant Holt and Russ Martin. They're trying to keep a lid on everyone. They're trying to say, look, lads, just remember it's a game. You've got to just try and wind it in. So everyone's reminding each other to sort of say, right, so just keep your cool sort of thing. But when you run out, even for the warm up, you know, you can see the Norwich fans are loud as anything because it's an extra special game. What we could be on the brink of, you know, the atmosphere, and yeah, just to be a part of that. I mean, I was delighted that I scored, but when the fifth goal went in, and you know, just the last goal went in, it's just, you're sort of looking at it thinking like, oh, this is amazing, you know, like celebrating with the fans, and you just feel such a part of something so special. It was incredible.
Yeah, it really was. It literally, as I say, it truly was absolutely iconic. And speaking of iconic as well, we have to talk about another game which will always stay in my memory forever. Of course, you played your part that day too. Is being promoted to the Premier League at Pompey. Fox to Jackson, that absolutely ridiculous through ball over the top that seemed like it lasted half an hour before Jackson stuck it in the back of the net. And you know, that must have been particularly nice for you, obviously, given that your background, of course, at Southampton to beat Portsmouth. What was it like what was that day like, and what was it like being on the coach on the way back, or did you not even get on the coach on the way back?
Yeah, that was again, that was another whole day that would stay in my memory, because I think we were at a hotel, and Cardiff were playing Borough, I think it was, and Borough beat Cardiff, so that obviously gave us the chance. But I just remember in the corridor, like lads were running up and down the corridor, like, yeah, because they were watching the game on obviously telly, whatever. And it was like, if they get beat, we're going up if we win tonight. So it was just a buzz around the whole hotel, getting in the bus. Again, you're trying to like keep a lid on it, because you're like, don't get too carried away. We've got to win this game first. But the buzz beforehand, going into that game, just thinking like, if we win this game, we're going up. And then going to the stadium, and like you say, it was. I mean, it didn't really come into it for me that it was Portsmouth, only because it was like in my head, I was like, I'm playing Norwich, and I just want to go up, and it doesn't matter who we're playing, you know. But coming in, the whole end was just full of like, you know, Norwich fans. They take up the whole end, and it's a tense match, because obviously it's a little bit nervy. I don't think it was an amazing spectacle as a match, but yeah, to get that goal, and and I think there was a bit of a scramble at the end as well. A couple of scrambles in our box where we were just smashing it clear. I think I've been taken off by then. But I was just sort of sat on the bench just watching it, thinking, come on lads, you've got to hold on to this. And then after the game, it was just it was just carnage really. We went we were in a dressing room, and we went out afterwards in Portsmouth and in our tracksuits and that, and it was just absolutely mental. And then obviously, you know, you might talk about it afterwards, but just what followed then as well, because we still had one game left, was just next couple of weeks it was pretty mental.
Just probably permanently pissed. Speaking of which, let's do a deep dive into promotion parties and celebrations now. Talk us through this image, please, Mr. Surman.
Well, to be honest, there's not much I've done really. I mean, I'm trying to lift it. I can't. This probably summed up. I'd probably say this summed up the lads that season. You know, just proper. You know, just banter all season. It was a great bunch of lads. Everyone got on well. There was no sort of like, and that sort of summed it up really. That clip, that is a great photo. But yeah, I mean, I've been sent that photo so many times, but yeah, it was just it's unbelievable. Like I say, the celebrations were just incredible.
Okay, keep in this. I'm not stopping on these celebrations. Did anyone get involved in the celebrations that weren't the players? Did we have an appearance from perhaps old Delia Smith, perhaps Michael Wynne Jones? Did we even have a David McNally appearance during these promotion celebrations?
Not really. I mean, you had.
Say it now.
Delia Smith and Michael Wynne Jones, absolutely incredible people. You know, for the club, they were so nice, so kind to like families. You know, my wife. You know, it just really took everyone under their wings, and they're just lovely people. So they came down and then congratulated everyone, and just were really part of it, as they deserve to be, because obviously the generosity that they've given to the club, and how much money they've ploughed in, the time and the care and the effort and everything like that. So, and the passion. So yeah, they got involved. They didn't get involved too much in the celebrations out in town or anything like that, but I think they were mainly involved obviously when we had the bus tour and things like that. We ended up at in the square and that. But yeah, they didn't get too involved, to be honest. But yeah, it was I mean, it was just a great thing to be part of, and they deserve to be part of it because of what they've done for the club, and obviously before I joined and afterwards as well.
Another good time for the club was 2011-12, of course, because we actually managed to survive in the Premier League, which, as I said at the start of this show, is now an accolade given our last couple of seasons in the Premier League. So just take us that time, Andrew, and talk us through that, because I know it was that last game that sort of propped us up a little bit. I think we overtook 3 or 4 teams, didn't we, in the end? I think it was that winner get away against Man City. I think it was Holtby's last game, I think it was, and he even scored that game. But just talk us through, like, what do you think were the reasons for us surviving? And, like, obviously having now spent so much time at Bournemouth, like, I guess, like, what are the differences in, like, how is it just a case of, we could do that at the time, but you can't do that anymore? And can Bournemouth do it because they've got more money than Norwich? Why do you think Norwich haven't been able to do it since? Like, why did we achieve it that year? All of those questions I want answers to.
Yeah. I think having done it at Bournemouth as well, like you said, I think both times we just didn't change our philosophy, didn't change our mentality. You're the unknown package. When you go into a new league, no one really knows what to expect. They underestimate you naturally, and that's a strength. So I think we still played the diamond, and we still went out and we still attacked. We had to be a little bit more box clever because obviously playing against top teams, and we ended up on a couple of hide-ins. But I think as soon as you go into a new league, especially when you step up into the Premier League, you start trying to think, right, okay, what do we need to change? Because we can't do this and we can't do that anymore. You're in real danger, because then suddenly you don't know, you lose your identity, you don't know who you are. So we just went out and said, well, this has got success, let's go for it. And yeah, I mean, I think we held our own against most teams. You're gonna come up against some good teams like Cities, Liverpool's, United's, and teams like that, especially back then. But we just stuck to our guns, and I guess there is it's difficult to compare now Norwich to then Norwich because it's different personnel. It's there's different management in place. The clubs run differently. There's a lot of different factors that you probably look at and go, it's like chalk and cheese. But it's just trying to find that philosophy that works, that mixture that works, and then you've got to have the right players to do it. I mean, it's incredible. I played against Norwich. Well, sorry, I didn't play against Norwich. I was on the I remember playing against Norwich when I was at Bournemouth. I think I was on the bench and we lost 1-0. And I think that's the season that Norwich got relegated. And I remember having a meeting before, and we were sort of, the manager was like, look, these are a decent team, very good team on the ball. Like, they pass, they move, they're very, like, their movement is very good.
Yeah.
And we lost 1-0. I think Steve Cook got sent off for handballing it. But it was just, you look at that and you think, I would probably say, watching that game, Norwich were one of the better teams that we played. But it was just, the difference is that if you don't take your chances or you let too many goals in, and I know it sounds sort of completely simple as that, you're just not going to stay up. But it doesn't matter how good you are between the boxes. And I think that's the thing. You have to be ruthless in the Premier League, and I think that's probably, I remember when I think I'd gone on loan to Bournemouth when I left Norwich, and Chris Hughton was manager. I think, was it before? I can't remember. But anyway, that season we just didn't score any goals. And we just conceded the odd goal. We were tight, but we could see. And the problem was that if you haven't got the balance in the Premier League, you can easily get punished. You can be the best footballing team in the league, but if you don't pick up wins, you don't pick up results, and that's the difference. And I think that's probably the only difference I can see. We were free flowing when I was at Norwich in the Premier League, but it's trying to find the balance of sort of saying, right, we need to basically score more goals than them, and that's the mentality we had at Norwich, and it worked for us. Now it's almost like, well, if you don't get the results, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're going down. In the Championship, you can get away with it a little bit. You might finish mid-table, you might win more games than you lose, but you finish mid-table, you get away with it. You might get away with mistakes, you don't get away with them in the Premier League. That's probably the difference. But again, I can't comment too much because I haven't been there every week to watch Norwich. All I can comment on is when we've played against them with Bournemouth, footballing wise, I'd probably say they're one of the better teams that we've played against, that we did play against. But it's results orientated in the Premier League, and that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? If you get enough points to stay up, you're up. So
you mentioned a name there, Andrew, that seamless link there, which was Mr. Houghton. And and I know that you can't necessarily fairly comment on what's going on at Norwich right now, but there's almost a link between, I believe, what the shift between Lambert and Houghton and Farker and Smith and I really want to ask you about that. Like, I know obviously that was when you left the club, but like, what, in your opinion, what was it like being involved in the shift in like dynamic? Because as you say, like, Chris Hughton came in, shored it up. We were super defensive. Holty mentions to me loads of times that it was just an absolute snore fest. But like, what's your opinion on it? Like, what was it like behind the scenes? Was it tough to handle as a player?
Yeah, it was. When you're not playing, it is definitely, because I wasn't really playing. To be honest, I did have a knee injury at the time as well, so that kept me out for a few months. But I think you've nailed it, really. I think we just went from no fear, high press, all out attack, might get beat 5-0, but might win 5-0. We went from that to sort of, again, no disrespect to Chris Hughton, because I really like Chris Hughton. I had a lot of time for him, but obviously we got relegated. And I think I'd probably say the style was completely different. It was defensive. It was keep it tight. It was try and nick a goal. And like I said, alluded to earlier, if you don't nick that goal, then it's very difficult when you go behind against teams to go, right, we're going to come out now. You can't. It's very difficult to shift that mentality and say, right, we're going to go from 2 banks of 4 to suddenly, right, we're all out attack. You almost can't do both. You can do it if you score first and you go, right, we've got everyone behind the ball now. We're going to attack and now we're going to drop in. To go from defensive shape to then go, right, we're going to attack and we're going to try and score goals. It's very difficult because players have got their jobs. And they're like, well, I've been told to sort of stay in here. I can't go on my own, because then if he doesn't realise what he's doing, then we're sort of disjointed. And I think that's the problem. You see teams, I mean, in the Premier League have done it, where they've just been so hard to play against, been so defensive, win games 1-0, and they end up in Europe. But they might have a maverick, they might have a player that just wins in games, or they win 1-0 a lot of games. But we didn't really have that. It went from like, right, all that attack, exciting football, to a little bit like, okay, just be cautious, be defensive, keep staying in the game, and then we'd end up losing 1-0, 2-0, or we get beat 5-0, and we think, well, what's the point? Because we're sort of sitting back. Yeah. So, and like I say, again, it's no disrespect to Chris. It was just a different change in mentality, I guess. 2 different managers have different ideas of how to play.
Yeah.
And like you say, I mean, you speak to Holty, I'm sure he'll he'll tell you so many times about how frustrated he was. But it was one of those things where you just couldn't, it was almost like chalk and cheese in a way.
Yeah, and leaking into those, perhaps frustrating times. I want to sort of probe you on your exit from the club now, Andrew. That's okay. Which is that, so obviously initially it was a loan move to Bournemouth in 2013, which was then made permanent September 2014. Like, what was your exit like from Norwich City overall, and like, do you have any regrets from your time at Norwich City at all?
No, I mean, I don't have regrets. I think I was unlucky with injuries. I think even when we got promoted, I had 2 serious knee injuries, which I managed to get back from. And then the other one was quite innocuous again when Chris Hughton was there, just sort of tore my ligament off my bone, basically. And they didn't realise what had happened. And I had injections, and I kept trying to come back. And I remember playing against Luton in the Cup, and we lost 1-0 at home, and they were non-league at the time. And it was like, and I remember playing on the left. I think it was my first game back from injury, but I didn't realise at the time it had ripped off the bone. So I was like, I couldn't kick properly with my left foot, and I was trying to play. And I remember after that game, I came in, I spoke to the manager, and I said, look, I can't kick the ball. Like, I can't even, if you ask me to cross it, it is so painful. So then I went to see a surgeon in London, who then said, he scanned it, and he said, your ligaments ripped off the bone. It's been like that for 3 months or whatever. You should have had an operation ages ago. So it was things like that where it was stop-start. I'd come back into training, it'd be too painful. So I'd come out and I'd have injections in it. And it was just a nightmare. So it was a stop and start season for me. And then obviously Chris Hughton was a manager at the time. I think he got sacked, and Neil Adams stepped in. And I really like Neil Adams. You know, he'd obviously come from the sort of under 21, under 23 setup, and I think he just sort of was like, look, I'm going to take charge for a little while, and I got on fine with him. But I think it was that point where I knew I was leaving. You know, I felt that it was time probably for me to leave. He asked me to. I think I played in one more game before I signed for Bournemouth on loan. I think I played in a cup game at
Yeah.
Carrow Road, and it was one of those where I sort of people telling me don't play in it because you get injured, you can't move, and I was like, yeah, but I feel like I owe it to Neil Adams because obviously,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to let him down. So I ended up playing in it, and yeah, and I think that was the. I think the last game was probably Norwich v Bournemouth actually, and I wasn't involved in it. I watched the game and then I signed for Bournemouth almost like the next day or whatever. So but yeah, it was just. I think it was the right time for me. I think I was trying to come back from injury and moving back down south as well. From where I was from, I knew Eddie Howe from when I played there and on loan when I was about sort of 19 anyway. So yeah, it was the right time for me, and I think probably the right time for the club. I guess you know it was a difficult one as well because the chief exec at the time sort of being a little bit difficult about whether he was going to give a new contract, and it was yes and then no and yes and no, and it was a lot of messing around. So I think in the end I just sort of thought, look, you know, I'm not going to sort of beg for a contract. I think if I'm going to go, I need to go. So and that was it. But I think obviously David McNally, I don't know when he left a couple of years after that. So
Yeah, fascinating insights, and thanks for sharing, Andrew. I appreciate that. I think it's one of those ones where and perhaps I'll throw this at you as a question, like hypothetically, if you hadn't been plagued by injuries at Norwich, do you feel that you would have been a mainstay, and therefore do you feel that you would have stayed at the football club longer, or do you think you were always going to just move back down south because that was where you were home?
not really. The plan wasn't really ever to sort of say, I need to get back down south as soon as possible, really. We really loved living in Norwich. We absolutely loved it. I mean, I speak to my wife. My wife would probably move back there now. You know, we loved living there. But it's hard to say because I think, especially with the high level you go, the turnaround of players, you know, every transfer window, there's players, they're spending millions of pounds. You know, there's new players coming in, there's new competition. They want to freshen it up. Fans want to see new players. The old, you know, the players that have been there a while aren't as fashionable necessarily because obviously you want new players coming in and you know, we've signed this player, he needs to play. And I've been around the game long enough and I know how it works. And I had the same at Bournemouth. Players come in all the time and they want your place. And so I don't know. I mean, hypothetically, I could still be there. You know, you look at someone like Alex Tettey, you know, he joined when I was there. He was there a mainstay for a long time. So, but I think it just in football, I think sometimes things happen for a reason. It happened, you know. I had a lot of injuries. It was probably the right time for me to leave. And if I look back on hindsight, it was a good thing for me to leave because obviously what I've achieved since I left. So it probably was a good decision in the end.
Do you feel perhaps you were underappreciated at Norwich City?
I don't really know. I mean, I don't think so. I think when Paul Lambert was there, I don't think I was. I felt he really valued me, and I felt valued at the club. Probably when he left, after he left, I probably wouldn't say so in terms of I didn't play as much. You know, I probably wasn't in a manager's plans as much. So you could probably say from that point of view, maybe from the fans, I don't really know. I never was big on social media. I didn't really know what was being said behind the scenes. Probably the reason I'd stayed off social media, to be honest, all this time. So maybe, I don't know. Everyone's got their opinion, and I'm sure there's positive and negative ones. But you know, that's the nature of football, really. You know, people's got their opinions, and like I say, if they are like you or they don't, or they see the good things in it or they don't, and it's just one of those things, really. That's what you've got to live with.
I've taken you to a couple of darker subjects. I'm going to lift you up to a lighter one now, because of course on the TNC podcast, when we have a special guest, we like to get their best Norwich City 11 from their time at the club. And I must admit, Andrew, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking this team would give our current team a hell of a go. So talk us through this. Just lean over for me so we can see. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, okay. You needed to perhaps even slim up even more for the slot that you've on the screen there. So talk me through this from back to front. There's a couple of ones which I want to home in on. But first of all, kick off with John Ruddy. Why has he made your number one spot?
Well, I think he was the mainstay keeper when I was there. I think he joined at the same time. Again, we had a a few of these players joined at the same time. And yeah, he was the mainstay. Again, he was a massive part of the team. He was a nice, lovely guy. I got on really well with him, and obviously he went on to then be selected for England and things like that. So yeah, I think he was the major choice. Like I say, he was the main keeper when I was there. So I'd definitely have to pick him.
Russ Martin, the Norfolk Cafu. I'm not so sure he'd be happy that you put him right back, mind.
No, to be honest, when he was the whole time I was there, he wanted to play centre half.
Oh,
But
right.
but I would say, yeah, Russ. I mean, again, like I said before, great leader, great lad, looked after the lads. And I just think he was a great character. And obviously, I went on to play for MK Dons when he was manager, and he was no different. Obviously, he was a manager. We had the manager sort of player relationship still slightly, but yeah, he was great, and he brought all the lads together. He kept the standards high. He had such high standards himself. He was a great professional. So. And a great lad, so I have to put him in. But obviously, again, he was a mainstay. He was right back the whole season when we got promoted, and obviously when we were in the Premier League as well.
Adds at left back. I mean, that's a pretty obvious one, really. I mean, you'll never beat the Drury was the chant. But the two that I'm really interested in homing in on here is and we've never had either of these two mentioned: Zach Whitbread and Elliot Ward. why have they made your team?
You know what? It's funny. I couldn't know exactly. Well, I couldn't quite. It's one of those where I was trying to look back and I was thinking, who plays centre half? Well, I knew Wardy played centre half because he joined at the same time as me, and I know Zach as well. So, but I put them in. I put them in because again, they were involved in the promotion. Both great lads again. All contributed to the way that we played, the dressing room. They're just good lads. And to be fair, I think Wardy had a lot of experience. He come from West Ham. He played for a few clubs. He done well. And obviously Zach, again, he was just a great lad. He was just again, he wasn't another player that didn't have any ego. He just got on with it, and I like the fact he's left-footed as well, because I think left-footed centre halves, I think they look the part. So yeah, I had to put them two in because I think that's a good back four, and I think that was probably the main. I think I'm right in saying that was the main back four when we got promoted.
Yeah, I believe so too. If my memory serves me well, I've not drunk any beer yet today. David Fox, I just think that, and we had the pleasure of speaking to David Fox as an audio exclusive on this podcast, and it was fascinating hearing from him. I just think he was one of those players where we didn't realise what we had when we had it. And I actually feel like you're in that bucket too, Andrew, to be fair. But just talk me through David Fox. What was it like playing alongside him in midfield?
Yeah, he was brilliant. I think you probably summed it up there. I think he went completely under the radar, and I didn't appreciate. I appreciated him at the time because he's a fantastic footballer, and he was the one that he would feed the attacking players. So if you didn't have someone in there that was as good as him on the ball, then you Crofties, Hoolans, Lappins, Holtz, Morrison, myself, you wouldn't be as effective. And I realised at the time, but I didn't realise until I went to Bournemouth and played as a sitting midfielder, how important that sitting midfielder is, because you have to feed everyone else ahead of you. And he had everything. He had the short pass, he had the vision, he had the long pass. So I remember I think he came second for player of the season, obviously behind Holty, who was always going to win it because of his goals. But I think Foxy came second, and a few people were a bit surprised, but I wasn't surprised at all, because I just felt he was such an integral part of the team, and without someone like him in there, the rest of the team wouldn't function.
Yeah, no, I can completely agree with that. And I've noticed here, Andrew, you've been extremely humble here. Whenever we've asked someone for their best Norwich City 11 over these podcasts, they've always featured themselves, but I've noticed that you've not put yourself in. So my question to you is, if you had to get yourself in this starting 11, who would you be dropping to get Andrew Surman in there?
Don't know. Oh, God, I don't even want to say.
It can't be
someone in there and put them out, but I don't. The only person I'd want to be is Foxy, because I'd want to play in that position.
Okay, fine.
I wouldn't say that I'd drop him out. I would just say that's the position I'd probably want to play, even though I didn't really play there when I was at Norwich.
Yeah,
But yeah, that would be the position I'd want to play. Although I played mainly in Laps's position, but I put Laps. I put Laps in as well. I mean, again, when you talk about great lads, great left foot.
yeah,
And again, I probably missed him out with Holty and obviously Russ as well. Just you talk about angry Scotsman. He wasn't. He was. That's not disrespectfully, but he wouldn't stand for any sort of like drops in levels, but he was just a great lad. He was there when I joined. Got on really well with him. I still speak to him every now and then as well. Just a all round great lad and a great footballer. So he played. I think he played left back. He played left wing, right wing a couple of times. But yeah, he was brilliant. And again, he's a club legend. Like ads behind him,
yeah.
Simon Lappy, King of Spain. I mean, it says it all, doesn't it?
Absolutely. By the way, if you keep in touch with Laps, what about him becoming? He's now learning to become a pilot. Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah, he's got to help us all. I'm never going to fight with him on charge, but I can imagine him coming over the intercom on a PA flight, absolutely tearing into someone. But
100%.
but no, he's been doing it for a little while actually. I know he's been doing his pilot's license. I don't know how far he's got with it at the moment, but he's he's been persistent with that. So I don't know how far off he is, but yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting for him to qualify so I can get some free flights on wherever Scottish Airways or wherever he's flying. So.
I must admit, I'm not so sure about the King of Spain flying me to my next location. I have to say, look, we are relatively short time, so we don't need to talk about Wesley. Obviously, he's ridiculous, and Holty, that's an obvious one. Crofts is obviously a workhorse. I take it that's why you put him in. But again, another name that doesn't often get put into their 11s is Steve Morrison. Why is he featured for you, Andrew?
I just think he was. I know he wasn't the promotion team, but I think he gave us a different dimension when he joined in the Premier League. And again, people probably might not notice it, but he just ran in behind and he stretched the line. And he was so effective at that. He scored some decent goals, and he was good in the air. But he just gave us that dimension where we could go in behind. It wasn't all about playing short passes and trying to break. We could just stick it in behind for him, and he'd run. And he was an important part of us staying up that season. So I think I have to put him in. I know you touched on Crofty. I've got to say a word about Crofty. Crofty, one of the nicest guys I think I've ever met. Footballers as well. So great, honest, like professional, good footballer. Just again. But if I look at this whole team, you had all these people that brought something to the party. We weren't carrying anyone. There was no one sort of like, well, he doesn't really run, so we're gonna have to sort of do his run for him. But when we get him the ball, he might do something. Even Wes, he was that maverick, but he worked hard.
Yeah,
he didn't just, he didn't sort of sack off the sort of run in and all that, whatever. He would put a shift in for the team. And I think Paul Lambert obviously came in and rejuvenated his career because I think he was a little bit on the way out before he joined. So yeah, I mean, he's incredible 11 there.
He and Wesley is still ripped to shreds, by the way. Like he's still running, like big time running.
But you got to say that he's still playing at Cambridge, isn't he? I think so. He's absolutely loving it.
Yeah, it's he has been just probably the best player of all time, in my opinion, in my lifetime, anyway. And
yeah,
I'll put you on the spot here with a couple of questions, and perhaps quick fire. Which player at Norwich did you have the best connection with, the best friendship, the best relationship? Like, which player can you go now and go like, yeah, he was my boy?
I'd probably say Laps or Foxy probably. I'd probably say, I think those two I probably got on best with. In a dressing room, but I got on well with all of them, to be honest. But yeah, probably had a bit more of a connection with them. Yeah.
Which one did you room with?
Who did I room with, actually? I think we might have rooms on our own. I think Foxy. I might have roomed with Foxy. I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't remember who I roomed with. Not that I can remember, to be fair, but no, I can't. I can't remember any.
Can't imagine Foxy's a snorer. Obviously, Andrew, there's thousands of Norwich City fans watching and listening to this now all over the world. Do you have a message for them at all?
Well, just just a massive thank you for the time that I was at the club, to be honest. I know you alluded to it before, do you think you're undervalued or anything like that? I never got that impression when I was playing. There might be plans out there going, "Oh, he was rubbish," but no, but I just want to thank, everyone for their support, because I mean that time of my life, that time of my career, that time of my family's life was just absolutely massive. We still got friends from Norwich as well. The Cooks who are close to, we went to Sophie Cook's wedding actually about a couple of months ago. So it was just an amazing time to be part of the club, and obviously, like I say, I mean, I always one of my favourite memories when we got promoted is when the whole square was just full. And when we visited Norwich since, we've walked through the square and thought, I've told my kids that they were too young at the time, but just sort of say this whole thing was full. We were getting presented with a trophy there, and it just incredible memories, incredible place, incredible fans, incredible club. It just amazing time of my life.
Andrew, thank you so much for your honesty, your transparency, your integrity, and thanks so much for your time and sharing your Norwich City story with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you so much to everyone that's watching and listening. If you've enjoyed this conversation with the mighty Andrew Surman, the most handsome midfielder we've ever had, do let us know. We're all over social media at Talk Norwich City. If you're listening on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, give us that 5-star rating. Don't you dare give us 4. Let us know, as you say, what you thought about this episode. And finally, there's only one thing left to say, Andrew. Can you remember the Norwich City chant?
I know the tune, but I can't remember the words.
On the Bull City?
Scrummage.
Yes, that was it.
I can't remember the first bit, but yeah, I remember the rest.
Do you know what? Every time I've said that, someone either doesn't know, they've gone with On the Bull City, but they've never said have a little scrimmage. So, Andrew, for that alone, I appreciate your time. Thanks so very much, folks, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.